Welcome to this explainer. So today we're actually exploring a really profound, entirely experiential shift in how we process reality itself, drawing straight from our source material. We're going to talk about the deeply ingrained quality of your mind and how you can literally transform it, taking it from this state of restless, constant doing into a vast, incredibly grounded state of just being.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right now, literally just a few seconds ago, were you kind of waiting for this explainer to start? Really think about that feeling for a second. If you weren't actively aware that waiting was happening, well, your mind was probably restless, looking forward to the future, totally detached from the actual now. But if you were truly present, there was absolutely no waiting at all. You were just here, totally grounded, and ready to instantly listen and absorb. And honestly, that subtle little contrast is exactly what we're dissecting today.
See, without awareness, our minds just naturally get restless, don't they? They're constantly projecting forward into whatever is coming next, jumping around from one anticipation to another. But, and this is a huge but, as our source material points out, the quality of your mind is something you can actively choose to develop. It's something you can absolutely transform simply through observation. And when we actually start observing our own mental landscape, we uncover two drastically different ways of experiencing this current moment.
So this brings us to a crucial distinction that kind of changes everything. We hear about awareness or being present all the time, right? But feeling present usually feels like an intentional act, like something you actively need to do. You're focusing on an object, which inherently feels a bit limited, and let's be real, requires effort. Presence, on the other hand, is completely different. It's an already existing state. It's vast, it's incredibly grounded, and it feels a whole lot more like an effortless, all-knowing being. The source actually notes that when you sense this true presence, it's so much firmer and way more expansive than just pointing your attention at something. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Our source text uses this absolutely striking analogy. Think of awareness as the spider. The spider is just sitting there, expending energy, becoming aware of whatever happens to fall into its trap, the specific object. But presence? Presence is like the web itself. It's the expansive, interconnected entirety of the space, effortlessly holding whatever lands on it without having to dart around and actively look for it. Let's take a beat to really define this based on the source. Presence is an unfettered, vast, all-knowing state where literally everything is effortlessly known. It pervades seemingly in all directions. In this massive state of wakefulness, things like drowsiness, restlessness, or confusion, they aren't problems you need to fight. Actually, they're merely objects arising within the grand scope of presence. They happen inside the knowing, but they absolutely do not define it. So, you might be wondering, how much effort does it actually take to achieve this expansive state? Zero, absolutely zero. And this is the great paradox our source material highlights. If you intentionally try to be or become the consciousness, you instantly lose the state. Consciousness is already conscious, totally on its own. You don't need to make it happen. The moment you try to add this sense of becoming, you disrupt the very silence of it. Let's trace exactly what happens when we do try. We end up falling into what we can call the trap of trying. First, an intention forms. Then, the very moment trying begins, a projection occurs. You essentially project yourself away from the stillness and straight into mental activities or formations. And once that projection happens, boom, attachment takes over. You lose that unfettered vastness and just get completely tangled up in the weeds of trying to make something happen. You start perceiving states of mind instead of simply resting in the pure knowing. Ultimately, the true culprit of lost presence is that attachment. We lose our grounding simply because we attach ourselves to our physical body, our mental formations, or even our awareness itself. We start actively looking for the state rather than just existing in it. The source suggests that simply relaxing is the key to countering this. Relaxation directly opposes the greed, the wanting, and the craving to capture or hold on to a specific state. Because really, when you let go of trying, you finally become free. Now, when we project and attach, we essentially downgrade ourselves to what the source calls the body level. At this level, you feel like this miniature, somewhat helpless self with really strict limits. You see massive hierarchies everywhere. The text gives a brilliant example of this. At the body level, a house is bigger than your body. A country is bigger than the house. The world is bigger than the country, and the universe is larger than the world, right? These forms create a really heavy impression of differentiation. But in the universe of presence, Everything, whether it's a fleeting bodily sensation, the entire universe, or just a passing thought, they are all just equal appearances. There's absolutely no hierarchy and no specialness given to any single object. So the absolutely crucial point is this. Where are you standing right now? What is your actual experiential position in this exact moment? Do you stand as a limited physical body? Do you stand as a passing emotion, feeling like your grief or frustration is who you are? Or can you stand in the position of presence, vast, alert, and overlooking, where all these intense human experiences are really just fleeting objects, just floating by on the screen of your mind? Now, what's really interesting about this is how the source material uses this ultimate clarifying metaphor for consciousness. I want you to mentally picture something for a second. Imagine a perfectly blank piece of paper, but it's completely covered in these incredibly intricate, highly detailed drawings. Look at how this visual metaphor breaks down. The drawings represent all the objects, thoughts, and appearances of our daily lives. And usually, we give all our priority, all our attention, and all our specialness to these drawings. They become intensely significant to us. Meanwhile, we completely forget about the piece of paper underneath the whole shebang. But that paper? That is the underlying presence. It never disappeared. It's the all-encompassing knowing that silently holds every single drawing you've ever experienced. So if you want to stop staring entirely at those busy drawings and actually rest in the canvas itself, the source outlines a few remarkably simple steps. First, just become aware. Then, carefully notice that this feeling of awareness is also an object being known. It's really just another drawing. Finally, let go and be silent. Don't try to look for the presence, and definitely don't force a state. If you're familiar with the different flavors of mental functions, you'll find the flavor of presence is completely unique. It requires absolutely no doing. And that brings us to this really profound realization directly from the text. The state of presence is awake, alert. There is no reason to maintain that state unless you're trying to be at a state. I love that. Presence requires zero emulation. It doesn't need you to forcefully maintain it, watch it, or do it. It already exists completely on its own, totally unfettered by whatever chaotic stuff is going on in your daily life. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, really powerful thought. The next time you find yourself feeling totally overwhelmed by the intricate, busy details of your life, ask yourself, can you find the balance in the knowing? Can you simply rest in the vastness of the paper? Try letting go of those busy drawings, even just for a moment, to finally recognize the silent, ever-present canvas of your own mind.